In this unit, we're going to be focusing on functions. In this lesson, I want to kind of approach the notion of functions from a sort of abstract way of seeing things. So, what is this notion of a function? And we talked about this in the first lesson as well. We learned that functions are basically just a segment of code, and each function carries out its own specific task. In these functions, they usually all have their own name, and you can call these functions by that name. And most functions also take inputs, and the function can take that input and it can do some work behind the scenes, and it can usually produce a new value. Or in the case of the print function, it just outputs a value to the screen. So there's kind of two helpful ways to understand functions, and it kind of depends on the type of person you are. For me, I'm more of a visual person, and I can kind of think of a function as this sort of magical black box. So we can think of a function in the following manner. For instance, you can think of a factory as a function. A factory takes in these kind of these parameters, these values we can pass into the function. So in this example, we pass in some raw materials, for instance, tires, the engine block, the spark plug. We can pass in all of these components into the factory. The factory, which its implementation has kind of been abstracted away, we don't really have to see it. We know, though, that we can pass these values into this function or this factory, and the factory produces a new output. In this case, it's just a single car. And the output varies based on the given inputs. For instance, if we passed in a different color metal, we might get a green car. Or if we pass in a different type of engine, we might get a sports car. Granted, that's not exactly how a factory works, but you get the idea. The second way you can approach a function is from a sort of algebraic point of view. If you're more of a math person, this might help you better understand functions. So in algebra, a function assigns a single unique output for each input. So in other words, for every x, there is a y value. So consider this function. We have f of x equals 2x plus 3. If we were to pass in the value 2 into this function, so f of 2, any instance of x is going to get replaced by 2. So this function, it evaluates to 7, obviously. So in the next lesson, we're actually going to kind of make this less vague, and we're actually going to look at Python, and we're going to kind of learn how we can write our own functions. This lesson was just kind of to get you thinking about functions and what functions are.